Wrestling Rebook. Spoiler and Andeve. Putting wrestling into submission. Wrestling Rebook. Spoiler and Andeve. Putting wrestling into submission.
Wrestling Rebooked, putting wrestling into submission. This is episode 20, and we are back for another episode fresh off of SummerSlam from WWE. We're going to be getting to a review of that shortly, and also talking about the hottest thing in wrestling, which has nothing to do with WWE, at least at this point in time anyway, with AEW and a return of CM Punk. So looking forward to getting into that. Joining me as ever, Mr. Spoiler, is the man shooting from the hip, swinging on his chair if you're watching on YouTube, Spot Monkey, Andeve. What's up?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. Just recovering from the biggest party of the summer, which probably had nothing to do with SummerSlam, to be honest.
Wasn't in Chicago either.
Just a little week's holiday away. It's good, but it's good to be back. Got straight back onto some wrestling. Still got NXT to watch, so yeah, lots in front of me and SummerSlam behind me.
With that in mind, let's get into it, shall we? So SummerSlam's gone down. 21st of August in Las Vegas, Nevada. There was a pre-match, Big E beating your mate Baron Corbin in 6 minutes and 35 seconds that no one really bothered watching. But thereafter, we had our curtain raiser, RK Bro, Randy Orton and Riddle, defeating AJ Styles and Omos in 7 minutes and 5 seconds. Good match to kick off the show.
No, not really. Rewind back to Money in the Bank. You've got AJ Styles, quality worker, quality professional, quality performer, one of the best in the business. Orton, veteran, superb. Riddle, who's clearly going to be main event despite how annoying he is. And all three of them are in the ring just to try and put over Omos, Emas, Agamas, whatever he's called. And I just find him really, really infuriating to watch because he's not a wrestler. So what's he doing there? Well, what do you think?
He's a 7-foot monster, isn't he? Yeah. Similar, like there's three fantastic superstars here that we should all be wanting to be on the edge of our seats to see in the first match of a big PPV. Just didn't care. Sort of breezed through the match. There's a big pop on the hot tag, and even down the stretch, just couldn't really invest. Okay, we've probably gone with it as a feel-good opener to put the titles on them. But beyond that,
yeah, I mean the best thing about it is it's a quick match. RK Bro got the titles, which is excellent because they got some momentum. Obviously, waiting for Orton to turn on Riddle and elevate him up the card, so that's all great. The tag team Styles and Omos is sort of obviously has to be on the decline now and hit their peak. So hopefully that's all broken up, on its way to breaking up, and the show can just moved on as we should.
Next up, we had Eva Marie with Dewdrop against Alexa Bliss, 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Oh, Christ. So Alexa Bliss seems to be over with this gimmick and this doll that she brings to the ring. I just don't care. I just wasn't interested. How can we invest in Eva Marie and Dewdrop as a pair when they've only been on TV for 5 minutes and now they're splitting up? I just couldn't get into it at all. The whole thing was pointless, and I fast forwarded. You?
Yes, it's mostly nonsense. Sad, really, because you fast forwarded, but you saved yourself 3 minutes. Bliss is obviously a good wrestler. You see that with her Twisted Bliss. And you did see he's been at the top of the card, but it's gimmick. To be fair, the gimmick might work, but they've taken it, the direction they've taken it with the flipping doll, and that is just so. Me personally, as a wrestling fan, it's so hard to invest in. If you're a 6-year-old kid, maybe it's fantastic and that's the audience and you buy a doll and all that sort of stuff. But the irony is Bray Wyatt has left the company and she's now got his gimmick and they're pushing it. It's just not a match for me that I'm interested in or have anything else really to say.
The only thing I would add is on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw is Bliss appears to be the next contender to Charlotte. Your initial thoughts to that?
I mean, someone's got to challenge Charlotte, and it's not going to be Baszler and Jax because they're still messing around. The issue is more that the belt's on Charlotte, I guess, if you're going to be honest about that. But I mean, if they just let Bliss come out in a slightly alternative gimmick and wrestle, fine. If they keep doing this thing with a doll, I can't understand how it's going to play against Charlotte Flair, who's going to be a serious, legitimate, standing champion.
Next up, we had the US title match, which is Sheamus against Damian Priest. 13 minutes and 50 seconds. Kind of felt like the first proper match on this card, which to me actually almost felt like a first date a little bit. Like two people that clearly haven't met before, no real chemistry, and just kind of finding their way. And it just never really clicked. Crowd largely didn't care.
So that's all your first dates, people you've never met before. Anyone that's met you always writes you off straight away. Sheamus is pretty decent. He had that good feud with McIntyre. He had some good matches on Raw. His style doesn't change, but styles make fights. So when you had him against Jeff Hardy, it was awful. When you had him against McIntyre, it's quite good. Against Priest, I don't know, it's okay. But for me, they've messed around with Priest so much since he's come up. The stuff with Miz and Morrison and all that, Bad Bunny, it did its thing at WrestleMania, but just wasn't really that interested. I'm not sure the crowd was that interested. Obviously, Priest hit a big finish, a couple of top rope spinning kicks, all that sort of jive, and they're both doing power moves. But probably the best thing about the match is the title's on Priest, and maybe he can go forward. But just didn't really click. And maybe that's a consequence of the match itself, and also the combination of the two matches that have gone before it. That you're just at this point thinking, WWE, come on, do something better than this.
Yeah. And ultimately, that the match revolved around the narrative of the face mask and the face mask being ripped off, and Sheamus couldn't possibly compete with it.
Yeah, and I'm also not sure about classic Michael Cole talking about Priest being the dregs of society, and he's come up the hard way and all this sort of stuff. And he just described him as someone that used to like to go to nightclubs. You know what I mean? Why is that the dregs of society? So I don't know. I don't really know what Priest's character gimmick angle is. I'm not really sure where Sheamus now fits in the broader picture of WWE. Is he a upper mid card, face heel, power puncher, or whatever? I didn't really add much to SummerSlam.
Next up, we had the Usos against Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio for the SmackDown Tag Titles, 10 minutes and 50 seconds. First match I semi-enjoyed.
First match you
semi-enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. What are your thoughts on it? I'm not a massive fan of Mysterio, but you enjoyed it a little bit, I guess.
Normally, the first thing jumped off the page is how athletic and impressive Rey Mysterio still is. He actually made his debut in 1996. Like, what? There he is, still flying over the top rope. It's not really my thing. I don't enjoy the lucha style at all, but I can appreciate what he does. There were successive ring post shots, which is a bit of a narrative for this show because I counted them from start to end. There were 2 in this match. Contrived splashes, which again is not really my thing, but I thought the Usos controlled the pace of the match well. And Dominic is getting better. I think he sells well, and can really take a suplex. Obviously, he did the Eddie Guerrero homage. And it was a little frantic down the street, and the crowd were and a good outcome as well to keep the titles on the Usos.
Yeah, definitely the right outcome. It sort of makes sense in the bigger SmackDown storyline, Reigns, the bloodline, all that sort of stuff. I thought actually, while Dominic has been fairly competent in various aspects, I think SummerSlam last year, stuff with Rawlins and that, I thought this match actually showed him up for the novice that he is. I really thought that Rey and the Usos looked far more effective when they were in the ring than Dominic did. And obviously he's a 22-year-old kid or whatever he is, but classic WWE, why rush him straight into a match like that? Or what, straight into the main event or main scene, whatever? Why is he not on NXT, learning his craft and all that sort of stuff? And of course, probably that's because they want to do a father versus son match between Rey and Dominic at some point, which I guess is quite cool. It's very rare. They've been teasing that a lot. It didn't happen in the match, which I actually think is good. It didn't take away from the match. I thought the Usos double super kick towards the end looked pretty brutal. It was on Mysterio. Match was quite good. It sort of want the show to start there, I guess. Had the show started with this match, bit of energy, bit of pace, bit on the line.
Yeah,
it might have been made for a more invested crowd.
Yeah, and I guess that's a bit of a theme, isn't it, with the crowd? I don't know if you picked up on that vibe with the lack of really.
Yeah, when they're in for it, they really were in for it. Almost old school with the signs and the weird faces or whatever in the background on camera. But I think WWE also set them up to be like that with these first 3 matches anyway, that no one cared about. That, you know, you're going to put Alexa Bliss out there, you know you're going to get a Wyatt chance. If you're going to have that nonsense with, what was the first match? Omas, like, you know, you're not setting the crowd up for much. So should stop, I guess.
Business certainly picked up in the next match. It's actually listed, it's gone down in history as Becky Lynch defeating Bianca Belair. Initially billed as Bianca Belair against Sasha Banks. She's mysteriously...
Where is she? What do we know?
Not a lot. One for Colicue.
It's not the first time that she's disappeared unexpectedly and unannounced. The timing seems a little bit odd because she's just come back and she's in the main event, or the main event scene for the Women's SmackDown title. It's a bit odd that they still advertised her like that, knowing that she wasn't going to be there. That's a bit sort of poor form.
Yeah, even right to the point where they were doing the match flow, the package. Everyone was on the package, and then there was no Sasha.
No, and no explanation of where she was.
No.
It's a bit unusual.
Anyway, it's gone down to this 26-second match.
Yeah.
Carmella comes out.
How to bury as many stars as possible in 6 seconds. Banks, Bailey, Carmella,
Selena,
and then of course Belair.
Yeah.
That is it.
So I guess there's a few ways you can break this down, right? I still don't really understand why Carmella was shown out there at all. Like, she didn't add anything. You could only bury her from that point. Obviously great to bring Becky back, have that pop from the crowd. Like, she was loving it, they were loving it. Like, feel good, go to the ring. And for me, all that needed to happen was a stare down, a face-to-face, a challenge that we could then get excited about as a potential rivalry between the star that they've been building up for months and the title holder versus probably the most over female that they've got, let's be honest, coming back. But instead, they choose to just bury her flat.
Yeah. I mean, it can't have been planned, can it? Because if they'd expected Banks to be there, then obviously, they weren't expected to rush Becky back. Once they know Banks is not going to be there, they decide to rush Becky back. And I guess that makes sense given what Punk did the night before. So like, okay, let's get her back in. But you're absolutely right. What they could have done is had Carmella and a few other heels hit the ring and say, we deserve the title, Belair, so I'm taking none of you because you're not worthy. They beat her down. Out comes Becky to a massive pop. And the two stand side by side or face to face and pose and go off the air and it's tease attention. You've got a long-term program there. As it is, you've instantly put the title on Becky for no real reason because the pop already exists and the buzz is already there. But you've also buried the next generational star that you've been talking about and put in the WrestleMania main event and has had that feud with Banks and Bailey and has been built up, won the Royal Rumble, and you just squashed any momentum flat. And so now, where's the payoff going to be? I suppose it's that maybe Lynch is a heel and Belair's going after her, but last time Lynch was a heel, the crowd cheered her. And what they actually did here was the crowd was sort of, like you're saying before about the crowd not being into it, the next hour or so, the crowd couldn't really recover from what on earth they'd just seen.
Yeah, and that was noticeable, wasn't it? They've gone mad for her to come back, and then she's won the title, and it's, quick as you dangle the carrot, take it away.
Yeah. And so you're not helping Becky, and you're not helping Belair because she's beating her. Like, where's the long-term payoff?
Have they just panicked in last-minute booking or last-minute decision-making?
I think definitely. I mean, definitely. Otherwise, Becky's only there because Banks is not there. We don't know why Banks is not there, so they just chucked her in.
Yeah.
They can't have been 2 weeks ago the plan to bring back Banks, backstab Belair, advertise her in the main event, then not put her and put Becky in. So it's got to be a sort of, I don't think it's bait and switch. I think they've just reacted to there's a gap here, we need to do something. But that was probably the last thing they needed to do.
Yeah.
They bring her back, have them tag team, whatever. Don't throw that away unadvertised in 26 seconds with the future star of the company that's been building. It was, I think I said to you on message, it's sort of the best and worst. The best thing about it was also the worst thing about it. And that was what I was referring to at that point. The best thing is Becky is back, and that's really good. The worst thing is look what they've done.
Yeah. Summarise it nicely. Can't really put it any other way. The annoying thing is it will actually be interesting to watch going forward, but like not for the reasons you kind of want to invest in it.
Yeah, and not as interesting, right?
Yeah, fundamentally. All right, next up we had Drew McIntyre against Jinder Mahal, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. It's actually got here in the small print. Veer and Shanky were banned from ringside.
Yeah, and also they'd had a match or something in the build-up that allowed McIntyre to bring that sword to the ring.
Right.
So that was the sort of stipulations. Those two, someone won their stipulations, so the two lackeys, who looked like two we had before, but now just sort of beefed up.
Yeah, the Singh brothers, man.
Yeah, and McIntyre can bring his sword to the ring, which, fine, but that sword reminds me a bit of Triple H's sledgehammer. It's such a ridiculous weapon that you can't ever use it. All he ended up doing was sort of swinging it in the air as a few people jumps out the ring. They could not that I particularly want to see McIntyre Mahal, but McIntyre can't challenge for the title because of stipulation last time out against Bobby.
That's what you think.
What do you mean? Oh, is he in a tag matches or something on Raw? He's not a contender, is he? He's going to be, well, I don't know. Okay, maybe he's in the mix. I don't know. Surely it's going to be Goldberg Lashley anyway, getting ahead of it. Crown Jewel. But so McIntyre can't challenge for the title. He's got to be on the card. He was sort of the top star for a year and a half. Then you go into the second show and you're fighting Mahal. There is some history there. It does make sense. They did build to it from Money in the Bank. But Jinder's lost any momentum he had when he had that title run, that when they were sort of exporting to an Indian market. It's not a legitimate threat, really. Not many people are to McIntyre. It's just another really short match on the card. That's this. Yeah. Belair, it's just let's just rattle through some matches, make them as short as we possibly can.
Yeah. It almost like this match was in slow motion. He done his belly to belly suplexes, future shot DDT, Claymore, and that was it. It was just
and really rushed as a feud, really rushed as a match.
Yeah,
rushed as a show up to this point.
Yeah, and we're rushing to the next match. Charlotte against Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley for the Raw Women's Raw Women's title. 13 minutes and 4 seconds. This match got a bit longer. I'm not going to go over my opinions on triple threat matches, but we had the standard someone lying on the outside.
The start for sure was definitely that. And it wasn't even done very well, was it? Someone just took a chop and then lay down for 30 seconds. The start was very much your typical, particularly for you, hated triple threat match.
Yeah, load of contrived spots. This is exactly my note here for the first 3 minutes. It wasn't too bad down the stretch. Some of those moves Charlotte pulls off, I just never get bored of watching. The way she reversed the double DDT from the suplex and then went into the moonsault off the top rope.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh my God. She can't be practicing that too much either. She just, be paraplegic. But absolutely amazing that she can do that.
She's got to be the most, or up there as one of the most all-rounded wrestlers, because she comes off the top rope with that. She did a corkscrew moonsault in this one. You see her do a moonsault, but then she's also doing submissions and figure four, whatever. But she can also hit a spear, like you said, those counters in terms of, sort of fluid wrestling's suplex counter, and the way she takes bumps, like she took that triple suplex with ASH from Ripley. So she's just all round. She's excellent. I'd say the only thing is that we know that, she knows that, and everyone knows that. And just WWE just doesn't seem to be able to move away from that. And the whole match seemed to be just building and building and building to when is Charlotte going to take control. So Nikki was the champion, but she was really a side effect in this match. She'd do a couple of counters early on. She did a couple of counters, one to Rhea Ripley, one to Charlotte. then she's just bashed to the side while those two continue the main feud. And then that was just the sort of narrative and the build of the match. More Charlotte, a little bit more Charlotte and Ripley. Here comes ASH. And she's the champion. She's the one with the title, albeit a sort of casual win. But I thought the second half of the match was pretty good and probably the best match on the card up to this point. Like I say, though, I just don't understand. Rhea Ripley's been buried in this feud this last 18 months. Has she won a match? Not sure. Charlotte's dropped the title cheaply, won it back straight away. Not really sure what the point of that is, unless it's just the run to 16 or whatever. Like I thought the match was all right, but it was just a bit telegraphed in terms of it's all about Charlotte.
Yeah, it'll be interesting actually. Like historically, I wonder if anyone else has won the same title on 2 successive PPVs. That's basically what Charlotte's done, right?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, so she won it, lost it, and won it back again.
Yeah, and that just leaves a bit of a sour taste because she's just winning title after title and sort of.
Yeah, she is calling herself a 12-time champion, and not including the NXT titles, which I saw a lot of the internet wrestling community saying, nope, we count the NXT titles, so you're on 14, which means you're only 2 away from tying. Can we just hurry up and get this going? Which I guess they seem to think that it's just all a rush to her to. I mean, maybe they plan to have her and Cena fight the same show, maybe at the same time or something, to see who can get 17. Yeah.
It's a shame, really, because actually go by Bret Hart's criteria. You know, look at her in-ring work, the promo, the look. She's up there on all criteria, isn't she?
She's excellent. She's also a very good talker. She flips off the crowd and the stuff she says and that. Yeah, pretty good. She's not really a heel or a face, is she? She's just Charlotte, and she just does what she wants, and then everyone boos her because she is.
I think they're presenting her as a heel.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess so. Except she doesn't necessarily do the moves that you'd associate with a heel.
Yes.
Like she really just responds to the booing of the crowd, which is largely because, and it's weird because everyone recognises that she is the top talent. They just go away. I've had enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, the way she works is babyface, but actually she's presented as a heel. Right. Move on, shall we?
Go on. Yeah.
Rattling through. Next up, we had Edge against Seth Rollins, 21 minutes and 15 seconds. Edge made his alternative entrance before the pop of his more well-known entrance music.
Yeah. He came into the Brood, which is very, very old school, when he was accompanying Gangrel.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why. I've got to be honest, I don't really know why did the feud call for this, mate. Well, who cares? I suppose it's just the greatest hits tour, maybe.
Yeah.
She's just living every moment. Rollins has also got that new music, which is a bit more sinister. I don't really know what is his character. Is he the architect? Is he the Messiah?
Is he burning it down? Is he Monday Night Rollins?
Yeah. Is he the cackling geezer?
Yeah.
He's just not quite sure, is he? Which is why people started booing him when he beat Lesnar, whenever it was 2 years ago, because they're like, well, what are you? What do you do? So anyway, I don't know if that was why they changed his music, they changed Edge's music and whatever. What do you think of the match?
Just before I get into that, there's something just a little bit off with this Rollins gimmick. I don't particularly like it. For someone that's so talented, he's actually quite good when he's just kind of himself on the mic. But he's just being presented in this like.
I don't know. It's just betwixt and between. He's sort of nothing.
Yeah.
He was the Messiah gimmick, and it hasn't. I don't know. It's just sort of stop start. And then sometimes he isn't it at all. He's just talking to Roman Reigns face to face. I'm Rollins, your Reigns. We're in the Shield. I can beat you. All right, okay, fine. And other times he's losing his head, or he's fighting Dominic, or he's taking people's eyes out.
Yeah.
So the match.
For the match, in the first minute, Michael Cole referenced Edge's neck 3 times, so I knew which way this was going.
Yeah.
And in itself, is fine. I just don't need it rammed down my throat by him.
No, I also don't find that. I mean, I do anyway. We get it. He's medically cleared, and he has been back for 18 months or whatever. The last injury he had was a tricep injury. Yeah. It's a bit like when Rollins, actually, of course, he's fighting, came back. and he busted his knee, was it, that Rollins had done? For the next year, everything's about, the surgically repaired knee, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, but come on.
Also, Edge has had the greatest match ever with Randy Orton. They were throwing each other through gyms at WrestleMania the year before. So he's been in ladder matches. Like, come on. Anyway, just the two still post shots in this match. So add that to your tally. It was slow to start, but I actually didn't mind it too much because of the way it built through the 20 minutes or so.
I'm the opposite, as in that, like, it was slow to start and I found it a bit annoying. But
yeah, and that feeds into this Rollins character because I didn't really like the trash talking that just went on a little bit too much. Again, just kind of rattling down your throat. But from the swinging neck breaker off the top rope onwards, I thought things really picked up. The corkscrew moonsault, Edge spear into the pedigree were just like wow moments.
I didn't catch that as clean as they might have done, that spear into the pedigree, but actually it looked all right because not everything has to be Olympic gymnast, does it? It can.
No, and kind of a go back to, if you recall, at WrestleMania 31, the RKO that Rollins turned into the stomp in their match there.
The opposite, wasn't it? Didn't he go?
Sorry, you're right. Yeah. But the way they were.
I was just saying, it's interesting that spinning net breaker, right? You talked about there.
Yeah.
Halfway through the match, Michael Cole goes, "Is Edge a high flyer?" No, not at all. You're like, what are you talking about, Michael? We've just seen him come off the top rope with a spinning net breaker.
Yeah.
A tag team with Edge and Christian going off tables, ladders, chairs, buildings. Like, is he a high flyer? No, not at all. I mean, like, what? Anyway, sorry.
Did Jeff Hardy spear him through a table from the top of the ladder?
Yeah, exactly. With the reverse, he speared. Yeah, exactly. Coming off those ladders. One of the most iconic WrestleMania moments is that spear into Hardy, and he's like, "No, he's not a high flyer, not at all." In fact, Edge says, "No, not at all." What are you adding there, Michael? Except for telling us that he's had a surgically repaired neck and he's going to be hit on it 100 times. But I think you're right. Yeah, the match did pick up, didn't it? And kick on.
What are your thoughts on the two moves that Edge used, his old school moves, which, if I'm honest, I had to look up?
The education.
Education.
Yeah, it was one of them. I thought it's
recently.
Yeah. And then, well, the education is some sort of bit like X Factor, but from behind. And then he's got that sort of cloverleaf type submission, which I hadn't seen for ages and ages and ages. Yeah, it's pretty good. And I suppose, like, if you're going to use the Brood music and stuff, then you might as well go back. And Edge has still got that stuff. He also used his missus move, the glamour slam, where he sort of picked Rollins up. And that's when I thought the match actually really got going. I thought for a while, is this match just really slow because Edge is old? But then as they picked up the pace, I mean, maybe the answer is that yes, but as they picked up the pace, and they were doing those pedigree counter, and Rollins also hit his own corkscrew moonsault and missed. What do you think about Edge winning by submission?
Damn, I was going to ask you that.
Got it first.
I like the ending, but I didn't really think there's any value in Edge winning, if that makes sense. As a spectacle for SummerSlam, for those people in that crowd, fine. But in terms of storyline and the bigger picture, what's the point of that? Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to be really negative about it, and there's obviously 2 more matches to come, plus you know what.
Classic Andeve.
Even if you just look back down the card, you're like, well, hold on. It's all the usuals: Edge, Charlotte, McIntyre, Becky, Usos, like, you know, all those the ones you'd expect to win. Maybe that's what you do at your main shows. But it's also another. I don't know if you'd call Edge part-time, but it's certainly an older star going over. Rollins is very credible and probably sort of moving into veteran territory himself. He's been around so long. But like you say, does that mean Edge is going for the title? Well, he can't. He's already lost to Reigns twice, so he's not going for the title. So where does it lead? Probably another match, I guess. But on the plus side, I guess at least you weren't sure who was going to win and that sort of thing. But I'd probably gone Rollins.
That's one thing you would say about this match. You didn't really know who was going to win, unlike a lot of others on this card.
Yeah, that's true. And also, if you go off crowd reactions and what the crowd want, the fans are clearly down with Edge, aren't they? All the way back to when there were no fans, people were thinking at WrestleMania, is Edge going to get cheered and Brian? Well, sorry, is Edge going to get booed and Brian cheered? But actually, the crowd is high on Edge. So, in that sense, given what they want, maybe Edge has only got. Well, he's only got a few years, isn't he? Rollins 10 years or whatever, but actually Edge has probably only got a couple of years anyway, so maybe that's building for something for him. But this was the best match on the card overall for me of the whole night.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see if I agree. Next up, the WWE titles on the line. Bobby Lashley with MVP, fantastic MVP, defeated Goldberg. Now, it's gone down in history as via referee stoppage. This was absolute shambles. This is absolutely embarrassing. I can't fathom how this booking is in any way entertaining, sells merch, gets anyone over, furthers the company's interests commercially. Dare I say, entertains the fans.
It doesn't do anything, does it? It doesn't do anything. I don't understand what they're wanting. Lashley is supposed to be a monster heel, and the crowd are cheering for him. They do a little bit of the Goldberg, and of course I can't help it myself either. Goldberg, whatever. But then once he's there, you're like, no, mate, get out, get going. You know, he even tried to chuck in a new move, that sort of front slam. But as soon as the match goes long, back in 1998, if his matches went longer than 2 minutes, 30 seconds, he was exposed. At 50 odd years old, against someone in the condition of Lashley, who's wrestling every week, he just, how many times has he got to be in a ring and be embarrassed, be it against Wyatt or Undertaker or whoever? Yeah, like, you know, he had his decent run with Lesnar, and that was pretty good for 6 months. And now he just keeps coming back and back and back. I don't want to see Goldberg. I don't think anyone wants to see Goldberg. He can't bring anything. Also, at one point, he'd only lost at one point he'd never lost in WCW. When he came to WWE, at one point he lost twice to sort of Triple H, of course, and someone else. He's lost about 60% of his matches now since he's been back. He's losing every single one. So, you know, what's the value in him? What they should be doing with Goldberg, this is the rebooking, rather than just the slagging off that we've been doing so far. What they should be doing with Goldberg is his music is still over. He can still hit a power move. Why are they not using him like AEW uses Sting? Put him with someone else. Put him in a tag team in a corner with John Morrison or Damian Priest. Let them do little bits. Let him come to the ring. See him on TV every week or every other week or once a month. But he just can't keep being in these matches, in these main events. He's got no credibility, and people surely have no interest.
Let's play devil's advocate here. Take, for example, that they've invested in him for the sake of taking him to Saudi, and they want him in a marquee match there because he is a big name. Even if that's true, probably is true, how does that help anything by having him limp off of an injury? Yeah.
And the trouble is, if you're making your money off Saudi and that, you can't just keep going back to the same well that is pretty dry and saying, okay, so you need to build some more stars so that in Saudi next year, Goldberg is at the side of Damian Priest or Big E, you know, and they're both like, yeah, we hit a powerful spear. Goldberg turns on Big E. Goldberg is done by Big E. Big E steps up to Roman. Like, this just sort of him challenging for titles like he's some sort of special attraction or top boss. Last time we saw him, he was getting battered by Strowman or whoever it was, or McIntyre. It's just pointless. And let's put him in there with Lashley. It's just ridiculous. It's just absolute rubbish.
Actually diminished Lashley somewhat. I mean, are we just doing it so we can get Goldberg's son?
Yeah. Did you even see when MVP hit him with the cane Goldberg walked for two steps, then went, "Oh, you've hit me with a cane. I better try and sell it." I mean, it's just terrible. And the crowd didn't want it. The match was too long. I think he's contracted for a couple of matches a year for another year or so. Yeah. But I mean, that can't be his role anymore. That can't be his role.
Yeah. Thoughts on Lashley? It was interesting on Raw. He came out to more applause again in San Diego. But as good as MVP is, he managed to actually get them to boo him within like 3 or 4 minutes of his promo. Like they were all booing him because that's what MVP does.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, Shona didn't get the Hurt Business back together, but.
So yeah, we need some new challenges for Bobby.
Yeah, who is? I mean, I think the next match is going to be Goldberg and his son in Saudi against him, isn't it? Or Goldberg with his son in his corner. How old is his son? He was about 6 years old 2 years ago. Now he's about 25. Who else is a challenger for Lashley? Potentially Big E coming across.
He's got
the Sheamus. He's not got the title anymore. He's big and hard hitting former champion. Nakamura. Oh, no one's SmackDown, aren't they? Nakamura on that. It's run out of challenges. Cena have to come back.
Well, couldn't be a better segue. We get to the main event. Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman against John Cena. Match was 23 minutes for the Universal title. And for me, this was just an absolute pair of them cut above everything else on this card by a considerable distance. I think the match was okay, but just the status and the height of the event just elevated everything.
Yeah, I mean, do you think this match, the wrestling in the ring, was better than Rollins versus Edge?
It's very different, isn't it? It's apples and pears to some degree. I think Reigns controls the pace of the match well. I like the way he's integrated his trash talking when he slows things down.
Yeah, and at the camera as well, isn't he? In a way, take him back to Hollywood. I'm sorry, Hollywood.
Yeah.
WWE.
Yeah. He's actually mastered that now. When to really speed things up, when to slow things down, lure the crowd. His work is, I think, just massively improved. Didn't really that spot actually you're talking about when he's looked at the camera. I'm not sure, it just didn't really sit well. Like it's another one of those stage spots, isn't it? But I quite seen the hope spots as he was coming back into it. The crowd were popping. I quite like the narrative of the AAs. Where he's just done a regular one first, then he's done it through the table, then he's done it through the top rope. Couldn't pin Reigns. Obviously, we all knew the outcome of this match, which detracted from it slightly.
Yeah.
Through this part, it's worth just looking at Heyman and just watching his rip.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I also did a good job in that Cena kept saying, "I just need a 1, 2, 3 to pin you," and so obviously that's why he went for so many of those pins. So. Actually, for once, they built a storyline that made sense into the match and then used it in the match rather than just lazily going, "Oh, Edge had his neck surgery repaired 11 years ago. Oh, just hit him on the neck." Actually, this was built in. I agree. I had that on the attitude adjustments, sort of slowly building, which makes sense rather than the first one be off the top of a cage into a table and look, he's kicked out. I thought. The feel of the match was better than the match. I sort of didn't think I've put down it wasn't the best match I've seen. It was a long way from the best match I've seen, but it had a big feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right on Reigns controlling the pace. I thought Cena was a little slow, inevitably so. Ring rust, age, whatever. Maybe different sort of training that he's been doing because he's not been training for wrestling. He's been training for movies. But I saw it. I sort of felt it worked and was a suit, like you say, a suitable main event. It felt like two big names, which is interesting because obviously Cena is arguably the biggest name in the business, top 5, top 3, whatever. And Reigns has obviously been built to that level. And even when we were complaining as fans, they've pushed him and said, "This is the guy. We're going to give him a rub with Triple H, with Rollins, with Vince McMahon. Like, we are going to put this guy over whether you like it or not." And then they suddenly have a star that can stand toe-to-toe with Cena. Well, if you want the same for Lashley or Rollins or Finn Balor or Nakamura, there's your model, WWE, and it works. And you've seen it work, so just do it with some others.
Yeah. Agree. And it's actually interesting how they've stacked the deck here, SmackDown versus Raw and all their superstars.
Yeah. Like SmackDown is clearly the A show, isn't it? SmackDown is clearly the A show.
Yeah. Which of course is on Friday nights, which happens to be the same show as,
of course, Rampage.
Yeah, or same night as Rampage, I should say.
Yeah.
So obviously that's the match itself. I think we all knew Reigns was going to win, and rightly he should. And then of course Lesnar's music pops. Lesnar's music drops, and I pop, I should say.
Yeah, that's the only. I mean, it's obvious in hindsight, but that's the next step, isn't it? That has to be, unless I don't know, it was The Rock coming out. Yeah, you're left actually with Lesnar and The Rock. Reigns has been through everyone else. Well, this version of Roman Reigns anyway, because the Undertaker's not around, Triple H is not around. He's been through Owens. He's been through Wyatt. He's been through. Well, he had a match with McIntyre. I can't remember if he won it or not. But he's been through all this stuff. So the next step is Lesnar, and it reminded me a little bit of when Rollins was running with the Authority, and Triple H said to him something about, we want to see if you're any good, but we want to see if you're the best. You turn up the heat and you make a coal a diamond or whatever. And Lesnar came out, and it's quite similar here in that sort of premise.
Yeah. And is this the way it goes? Lesnar's next, and then we get Rock at Mania.
Yeah, I saw. I was reading today or yesterday that The Rock is constantly in conversation with WWE about, coming back or whatever. With his movie schedule and stuff, I'd be big on The Rock's part. Forget anything else. It'd just be a big offer from The Rock to come back and do that. Not because he's putting someone over, but just because he's got so much else, invested in going on, and one torn ligament or whatever, busted wide open, and that's a problem for him.
He's got to want to do it, surely.
I think he's probably still grown up in the business, loves the business, all that sort of stuff. Him and Reigns have that Samoan connection, as we talked about a couple of episodes ago. And my only thing is, I did pop when his music hit. I did pop when Goldberg's music hit, even though I hate him. Is we have seen Reigns and Lesnar main event, a couple of WrestleManias, a few pay-per-views. It's always the same sort of thing. I know it's a new version of Roman Reigns. I know the dynamic is slightly different because Heyman is in Reigns' corner, and also Lesnar's come back with a ponytail. But is this really all WWE has? And the answer, I guess, is yes.
The answer is yes, and the counter to that is a few things. Firstly, the look. Both the pair of them are slightly different, as you've already pointed out. Lesnar appears to have this new look. Looks a bit older as well, doesn't he? Reigns in the current form, under this current guise, we've not actually seen the two of them. But the biggest thing of all is Heyman. And that's how you move this feud, surely.
Yeah, but I just feel like it's something we've seen over and over and over again. WWE, again, can't build any new stars. They've just gone back to Lesnar. I'll be interested to know if this was always the plan, or if this was in response to Punk, because who are the biggest people that weren't wrestling? Punk, Lesnar, Cena, and Rock. So there's only two they could feasibly get at the moment because of Rock commitments, because of Punk's situation. I'm moderately interested, but Lesnar needs to, for me to be interested, Lesnar needs to work in a different way. So when SmackDown went off the air, he just beats up Cena in exactly the same way he always has done, and just dropped 3 suplexes, did a F5, and then walked out again. I'm not interested in seeing another Reigns Lesnar match or series of matches where Lesnar comes back for a little bit, does a match Extremes rules and crown jewel, and then disappears again. That just speaks to the same problem we've been talking about for the whole show. Lesnar is far better than Goldberg, but it's the same thing, really. It's the same thing, and it's the same thing with Lesnar. Essentially, while he is excellent, is almost like a lightning rod of all the worst things of WWE. The over pushing they do of Charlotte, and the over promoting of Charlotte and putting her in everything. That's what they do with Lesnar. The sort of going back to the well of the old stars and not putting over new stars. That's what they do with Lesnar. Part-time stars, Lesnar. So I don't know. I'm a bit dubious slash skeptical slash cautious about how meaningful and effective this feud will actually be.
You're just going to have to take the positives, you know, and see some decent programming coming up. SmackDown's going to be absolutely jacked because you can have Becky on there as well.
Yeah, that's true. Also, Finn Balor's supposed to be in the title mix now, isn't he?
Yeah,
not to mention people like Nakamura and that weren't even Owens, Zayn, that weren't even on the card.
Yeah. What I was thinking though is potentially Baron Corbin could get a few quid out of Lesnar.
Have you seen the Baron Corbin videos of him walking around Vegas? He turned $20 into $100. He's going to buy a new shirt. What a fantastic character he's become.
Yeah. Fair play for that.
Also got Big E on SmackDown as well, haven't he, actually? He could do well with crossing paths with Lesnar to give him a bit more credibility.
Yeah, they won't go that way though.
No. My worry is we'll see Lesnar once now until Extreme Rules, and it will just be like Heyman cutting promos to the crowd.
Closing thoughts on SummerSlam? You enjoy yourself for hours?
I mean, if that's the biggest party of the summer, which I guess it is or was, then the summer's not as big a party as it used to be. It was lacking in top tier match quality, dominated by part timers and some questionable moments. I thought it was a dip down from Money in the Bank, not quite as good. And that it was passable or adequate, but nothing more than that is what I would say.
Yeah, it shows too long, too many stars, too many people going into the ring post, too many title changes, and too many part-timers. Other than that, it was all right.
Yeah. What catch up on YouTube? It's just watch Becky come out, Lesnar come out, Reigns get the pin, and half of Edge and Rollins match, and you're sort of done, aren't you?
You're done, yeah. In the words of Big Bryce. Time to move on?
Yeah, for sure.
Episode 20 even. Section 2 of Wrestling Rebooked, putting wrestling to submission. We are back, and for the first time, Wrestling Rebooked is all elite. We're going to talk AEW. How can we not? After the events of the last week. So Friday gone was the second ever episode of AEW Rampage from Chicago, United Center, and what a pop. Arguably, according to some members on the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, the biggest moment in wrestling for 20 years. CM Punk returns. How do you respond to that comment, Andeve?
I mean, it's pretty big. The pop was phenomenal. Not just the pop, but the prelude to it. So I thought the way that AEW created the buzz in advance, but I never mentioned Punk's name, but like it's clear he was going to be there. The crowd before going absolutely manic.
Yeah.
Absolutely manic. But the entire crowd.
Yeah.
And then when his music hits, they go nuts. And he comes out just about and they go absolutely nuts. So the pop was certainly, I thought the Cena pop actually was pretty big as well. But I mean, the pop, yeah, that's as big a pop as I can remember. I mean, you could certainly go back and start looking through the history of pops. When Austin returns or Rock returns or Bret Hart in Canada or whatever. Yeah, it's a massive pop. What did you say the biggest moment in wrestling in 20 years? I think it's easier to argue it's the biggest moment. It's certainly the biggest moment in wrestling in the last since AEW was set up, this is the biggest thing that's happened for AEW. I think AEW being set up is bigger than this because of what AEW has been able to facilitate, including this. But as a singular moment in that, this is probably the biggest moment for AEW and then arguably for wrestling since then. And it's been a long 7 years for Punk. So Punk, Lesnar, Rock, Cena, who I mentioned earlier, the biggest names not wrestling regularly. He's probably the one you most want to get hold of because of what he can do. So, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I think it's pretty large. It's pretty big. It's pretty incredible, really.
Yeah, so I think if you break it down, you know, as you touched on there, the way AEW actually set it up was pretty cool. They teased it enough to make you think something was going to happen, but they never actually announced it, and it was never confirmed. Imagine if Punk wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. advertise like Sasha Banks. Maybe Sasha Banks turned up instead of him.
And then, you know, the moment he came out, that the legitimate emotion from the crowd, obviously he had the crying fan that's gone viral, and from Punk himself, you know, took his time, came to the ring. And I know you're not an avid regular watching AEW, but the amount of things that they either rush or just cut off or have run-ins for, you know, it's widespread. Whereas here, they just let him go.
Yeah, I mean, I saw someone saying if that had been WWE, Punk would have been cut off by, and you're saying the same about AEW to be fair, but Punk would have been cut off by Miz and Morrison.
Yeah,
up something nothing match was actually they just let him. It reminded me a little bit of Bret Hart when he came back in 2010 to the WWE. He was just at a starting promo, and he said, and there's a weight there. There was a burden on Hart, and he'd been inducted in the Hall of Fame before, but he hadn't been on Raw or whatever. Yeah. The same with Punk. They're carrying baggage. I think Bret Hart even said, I wasn't sure what I was going to say until I got here. Obviously, he thought about it, and Punk said something similar, like, "We're winging this a little bit, but I'll get back to that."
Yeah.
But I thought his promo was phenomenal still.
He just has a way of engaging people that I've probably only seen her as comparable to.
Yeah. His sort of way of storytelling.
Yeah.
It's very natural. The way the stuff he takes you on.
Yeah.
It's really very good.
Yeah. I think he's probably has, I don't know, a little bit more depth to his character than Cena as well. Obviously, we've seen many Punk Cena matches over the years, but there's just something about Punk and the way he connects with fans. It's just, is it like anyone else? Like maybe The Rock?
Yeah, although The Rock has a more sort of Hollywood Hulk Hogan style of connection, whereas there's something more grounded in the way Punk connects with fans. But certainly the reaction to him is probably, you know, especially in Chicago, is not a reaction anyone else currently in the wrestling world would be able to garner. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the point, I guess. And it'd be interesting from this point forward to see how he gets used. Obviously, he references Darby Allin, they're going to be having their match. But you think about the amount of WWE talent that have come across to AEW in the recent months and have been used sparingly.
Yeah, so that's the thing I often ask you about, isn't it? I watched Aleister Black in NXT and thought it was fantastic. I'm a big fan of Rusev. Andrade, that's what he's still calling himself. He's actually what got me into NXT when I was watching his matches with Gargano. And I really started taking the product sort of seriously and watching it from bell to bell, so to speak. And you're like, well, all these talent over there, and you're saying, well, they're not using them too well. And I guess the thing is, you can always partly link back to my complaint with Lesnar. Yeah, you can draw a pop, you can have a match, and you can do some stuff, but really, what is that doing for long-term programming? And I guess it's the easy part for Punk was coming back, dropping a promo, and I mean, he could have just walked to the ring, fist pumped, and said a few things, and everyone would have gone nuts. The real challenge is, what will his match with Darby Allin be? What will he be doing 6 months down the road? Will he be able to put the company on his back like Jericho has done and build some new stars like MJF? Will he still be able to go? Or will he just fade into sort of, not obscurity, because I don't think he ever will, but will he just sort of fade back into the pack? I don't know what you think about that and how AEW will be able to use him and utilize him.
There are parallels, if you can use Jericho as an example, I guess, in terms of age, in terms of stature. But equally, they're very different in how they go about their business. And I just don't think Punk is going to take some of the nonsense that goes on in AEW for real. Like, he referenced professional wrestling more than one occasion in his promo, and he clearly takes it seriously. So I just think that some of the nonsense booking that goes on in AEW, he's just not going to stand for, and that will
such as
what nonsense booking?
Yeah, like what sort of thing are you like? No, Punk's not going to be having that.
You watch any segment with Kenny Omega in it, or the Young Bucks, some of the weekly or more bi-weekly 6-man tags that go on in the mid card that are just the same over and over. They're just forgettable matches.
Yeah. So almost like that's WWE-esque. So I guess there's enough. I mean, you got MJF, you got Darby. I mean, do you think he would ever go with Orange Cassidy and that sort of stuff, or do you think that's the sort of thing Punk's like? No, that's a bit disrespectful, running around with your sort of pants with your head and your hands in your pockets.
No chance. No, another shout might be Jungle Boy.
Jungle Boy, yeah. And I suppose Moxley is the obvious one at the top. You got Eddie Kingston as well. They could do some stuff. And if, but I think it's probably likely, Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt and Adam Cole, who's a free agent as of today or as of Monday, if they all join, suddenly he's got some partners at the top there, along with Omega, MJF, what's his name? Sammy Guerrero, if he's breaking out. So a lot of dance partners there, isn't it?
It's an absolutely stacked roster. And how can one possibly coordinate that into a coherent program?
Yeah, and that's before you can consider like Black and Rusev, Miro, Andrade, who won't do much. Like if Strowman potentially turns up.
Yeah.
That's a lot, isn't it? I mean, there's still a lot I feel like he could do on WWE. Rollins, Styles, Orton, Riddle, Reigns, Nakamura, Owens. The talent is all there, but the talent is just getting buried, isn't it? So I guess it's now up to Punk to help shape AEW. That's probably the best place for him, don't you think? I think if you come back to WWE, it'd been a bit more of the same. Whereas actually, if you want a legitimate competition, opposition, Punk is unless they've got Lesnar, which seems unlikely. Punk is the person to take AEW on its next step, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the key is the freedom for his own promos, his own creative direction, because he wouldn't have got that in WWE. And that, just to go back to the promo, is kind of what was enjoyable about it, because it just came across so personable and natural. And again, with the exception of Cena, in WWE, you just don't get that.
Yeah, and I guess what's making Reigns so compelling at the moment is he's almost sort of reality era.
Yeah.
This is actually who Roman Reigns is. You sort of think that he's the sort of big guy that's like, hold on a second, I am the best and whatever. But you've been given those scripted promos or whatever. Whereas now you've got your mate Punk also being himself, and Cena's sort of himself as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, what they're trying to do with most of the characters, which is why Rollins is so difficult to get on board with at the moment, because hold on, who are you supposed to be, mate?
Yeah.
There you are, Punk. You yourself go out there and entertain him.
Yeah. Is Punk as big as Reigns and Cena?
It's, I think in wrestling terms, those two, Cena's above both of those. I think Cena's a level above Reigns and Punk. I think Cena's right on that top echelon, whereas I think Reigns and Punk are slightly below. If you talk about the very, very top of Flair, Michaels, Hogan, I think Cena is on that level.
Right.
Like whether you like him or hate him, he's there. I think underneath you probably have Angle, Punk,
Brett.
Reigns. Brett's on the top, isn't he? Brett's on the top with Michaels. Oh, that's what you kept saying, is he Brett? Try and get him in. Yeah. So I think Punk's probably underneath, but depending on what he does in the next, he's only 42, so depending on what he does in the next 5 years will depend whether he ends up on that top plinth or slightly down. But he's certainly as big a star as AEW could have hoped to capture. I can't see them getting The Rock or Cena.
No.
Maybe Lesnar. Can't really see that.
Not now.
Well, obviously not now, but Lesnar goes for money, doesn't he? But he's the biggest star they could have got. Not just in terms of someone who's absent that you could get on board, but someone that could. Lesnar's not going to change the trajectory of your company. He's not going to kick it on. I think CM Punk is, and he fits what they're looking to do. So yeah, he's certainly a bona fide top star, isn't he?
What makes this really intriguing is that not that the casual fan might have realised it, but that episode of AEW was just so different from anything that they're normally doing. They never have someone come out and cut a promo like that for that amount of time with no one else interrupting it, and it obviously connecting on that level.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen ever.
There's only Rampage is the new show, isn't it? The new sort of the SmackDown to the Raw sort of thing. So you got
it's only an hour, but yeah.
But I mean, like the main show is the Dynamite. Is it? Right, they have it on Wednesday, so it's the new show. So he's actually opened up not even the main show. It's just the secondary show that's in Chicago. But yeah, everything about it, he gave away those ice creams and the T-shirt. I mean, you ask him, is he a big star? That T-shirt that he outsold, I think Pro Wrestling Tees said, or whoever it was, quickest selling T-shirt in 24 hours.
Yeah.
The viewing figures. I don't really care too much. I just want to watch a show and see some wrestling. But I started looking a little bit at the viewing figures and what they were saying and breaking down all the categories. It was so high. It was off the chart. And he's got Dynamite this week and All Out coming up. If he holds for those numbers, then they are going to be touching or within touching distance of SmackDown and Raw, which will be interesting to see then how Vince responds. Well, we've seen how Vince responds, but how he responds in the longer term.
Yeah, definitely. We've had the short-term response with, let's say, Becky and Lesnar. How are they going to return, or when are they going to start caring when the figures start coming in for ratings?
Yeah, it depends, doesn't it? I don't think they will start caring about ratings because they're making more money than they've ever made. They're happy to let Adam Cole's contract run down by mistake, or Daniel Bryan leave, or Bray Wyatt leave. So I don't think they care about ratings. I think they're about the money. And I suppose if it starts to affect these Saudi shows, or if the link with New Japan and Impact grows for AEW, I guess that's when Vince will start to take notice. What's his name? Who's the guy that does? Which one is Nick Khan? Is that AEW or is that WWE's chairman? Is that WWE? So he's on record as saying that AEW is now going to change. It's not about the indie guys. It's going to NXT is going to change. It's not about indie guys. They're going to go back to getting big guys and da 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 da. And so it's almost like rather than taking them on, WWE is reverting more to type.
Yeah.
Back to the Monday Night Wars. What WWE did was it created its own stars, molded its own stuff, and that's how it beat WCW. What it seems to be doing at the moment is just reverting to almost the WCW style. Let's get some people we've had before in, let's pay them some money, let's chuck them in and rely on the names. Whereas AEW seems to be the medium that's going, right, how do we build some new stars? And maybe they're doing it to varying success. But in the long run, that's probably going to be more fruitful than keep going back to Lesnar and Goldberg.
I hadn't thought of it that way, actually, in the comparison to Monday Night Wars. But it actually is the reverse, isn't it, of what the position WWE in then and now?
Yeah, like just paying big money, big contracts. What about, do you think Punk is going to have an impact on the in-ring product? Because you said the in-ring AEW, you think is still a bit limited. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's some guys, another one we haven't mentioned here is Adam Page, who's, massively over. Yeah, if he's not impacting the ring, then what is he doing?
Yeah, and I wonder where he fits as well, because you've got Christian Cage, who's just won maybe the Impact title, or he's won a title off
a title that isn't an AEW title.
Yeah, and then you've got Dax and whatever
FTR.
Yeah, FTR, and you've got the Good Brothers, so you have a lot of people floating around now. It's about harnessing that and getting that together so it looks like the SmackDown card and is stacked and organised like it. Yeah.
The crux of AEW is everyone's in a faction. There's always triple threats to get everyone on the card, or trio matches as they call them. There's a weak ass women's division that they don't care too much about beyond Britt Baker. And then they've just got the Omega at the top of the card who just comes out and fannies around every week, and that's it. So it'd be interesting now to see how that all shifts, paradigm shifts.
It's a good analogy. I think ultimately it's good, right? I mean, we've been doing this show for 20 episodes or whatever, and mostly sort of complaining about WWE's fallen star. It's not where it should be. We get excited about the odd decent match of Money in the Bank, or the odd Cena Reigns. The match is not that good, but at least these two guys are all right. So actually competition, another wrestling mind like Punk, with Jericho in there might make a difference. And ultimately, I don't mind whether it's WWE, WCW, Ring of Honor, New Japan, AEW, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Like Big Bryce, watch some wrestling. They're doing some good stuff on there. I'll be watching it.
Yeah. I think let's finish on a high point here. What a weekend we've had. All right, SummerSlam show was a bit pants, but we've had two big comebacks there. The Punk thing, AEW on the rise. What time to be alive?
Yeah. And let's not forget, I don't think either of us have watched NXT yet, but that was meant to be another solid takeover, like really good. So actually, you're thinking of wrestling, it starts Friday night with just some geezer coming back in his hometown on the second show was massive.
Yeah.
Slam, Cena Reigns, Lesnar, Becky, big names doing big things. And then NXT takeover as well, yes.
Which will be followed by the AEW PPV next week, all out.
5th, yeah. So actually, there's a lot to look forward to if it goes the way we want. But I guess we're rebooking rather than booking, so we'll just have to wait and find out.
Yeah, exactly. And there's tickets apparently going for like $300 or $400 for that show now.
Are you in for that? Are you?
Why not? Chicago. It's freezing.
What is that? What is it? I'll ask you when we're offline. How do you watch that in the UK?
Fight TV.
That's a new subscription, is it? Can you buy it as a one-off?
I think so.
What else is on that card? Is Paige fighting Omega or what?
It's Christian.
Oh, what, a rematch?
Well, yes and no.
There's the I see, because he's got all those different titles, isn't he?
Yeah.
You can see why there. Christian's left because he didn't want to be hurt by Rollins in a feud with Edge. Instead, he gets to be a title in the main event. That's why Christian's left.
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with money, is it? That's to do with ambition. So you get a few others leave like that with the same intentions, the same work ethic.
Yeah.
Could be
Let's see.
Could be reviewing their pay-per-views in future instead.
Watch this space. Anything's possible here at Wrestling Rebooked. On that note,
we might as well tap out.
Until next time.
Wrestling Rebooked. Spoiler and ending. Putting wrestling into submission. Wrestling Rebooked. Spoiler and ending. Putting wrestling into submission.